At the end of the day, no matter how well our research went and how much information we were able to gather, if we're recruiting for the wrong people, then we just did hella work for absolutely nothing. Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Nannearl, and this is Unpacked Angles with me, where we're focused on widening the perspective on all things UX and more. And today we are gonna get into recruiting, specifically recruiting research participants. I've gotten this question from a few researchers and from people who are just kind of in product in general at companies that are a little bit earlier in their life cycle. They tend to be a lot of product managers or product people, product owners, whatever you want to call them, that also take on research and design and just wear a whole bunch of hats. It was also a burning question on my mind when I started out and was working on a startup. So it's actually something that's not that hard to do if you have money. But if you're low on resources, it can get a little difficult, and we have to get creative sometimes when it comes to that. But you don't have to necessarily be low on money to not want to spend money on recruitment. Maybe you just don't want to spend thousands of dollars each time you have to recruit research participants. So we're going to talk about recruiting this episode. I'm going to start out with some of the typical methods of recruiting that we can do, and then I'll get into some of the things that I used to do back in the day to get kind of creative when it came to getting user feedback. And then we're going to talk about remote life because it's a thing. It's a thing now, and it is not necessarily making recruiting the easiest thing to do. So first, let's talk about the why really quick. Why is recruiting important? The too long didn't read version of the answer to this question is, at the end of the day, no matter how well our research went and how much information we were able to gather, if we're recruiting for the wrong people, then we just did hella work for absolutely nothing. We want to make sure that the information that we're gathering from people is actually going to be applicable. We should be basing our business and design decisions on data that we have, to be data informed. Research is in part a way that we gather data. And so misinterpretation or misapplication of this information can be really detrimental to our product and our business. So for example, if we are building a product for dog owners and we're gathering information from people who don't have dogs, what are we really doing here? That's just a basic example, but there may be times when we do recruit people who seem like they're the right folks to talk to, and then we talk to them and realize that we might have been wrong about that. This happens. But instead of continuing to talk to more people like that, we have to figure out what about this group is not correct and determine which way we need to pivot in order to get to the right people who we actually need to gather information from. This can help us to save resources. We don't want to be dedicating time and money and other things to information that's not going to be useful to us. Now, there are a bunch of different ways that we can go about recruiting for our research studies. One of the most expensive ways to recruit for participants is through a marketing research firm. And this is the easiest way to do this because you literally barely have to do any work on your end. You just tell them what it is that you're looking for and they will take it from there. So they will do all of this scheduling. They will find whoever it is that you need to find. And these can be really helpful when you are super targeted. So if you need to reach out to professionals like neurosurgeons because you're making a product for neurosurgeons, you can find those people through these types of firms and they will schedule everything for you. And they even have on-site facilities, some of them where they have different rooms where you can conduct this research in, and they have all of this equipment and recording stuff. They have everything, the works, right? I'd imagine those facilities are probably closed right now, but they exist. Very, very, very attractive option here. However, this will cost money, okay? You need to have a big budget to fool around with these firms. Recruiting and scheduling by themselves have a cost to them, in addition to if you need to use their facilities, which is going to be extra, and if you need to target super specific people like neuroscientists or neurosurgeons in Argentina, I don't know, it's gonna cost you. I got a quote one time just to kind of like figure out my options, and they definitely quoted me just for recruiting around 6K, I think. So it's gonna run you at least $5,000 just for recruiting people. If you got that, cool. Go for it. I'm sure you might not want to do that every single time you have to conduct research, but hey, if you got it, you got it. Another way that we can go about recruiting is sourcing from an online panel. So there are platforms where these panels already exist. So places like usertesting.com, Usability Hub, user interviews, they all have their own panels. And what this means is that they have tons of people from the US and internationally who sign up on these platforms willingly to be research participants. So they have this huge pool of people that they will let you tap into for a cost. So user interviews and user testing, those platforms can be on the expensive side depending on your research needs. The user testing, this is actually a platform where you can conduct usability tests as well. So if you need to conduct the usability test, you would use this platform and you would test. And I think if you need to test more than like 15 people, if you need to have more than 15 sessions a year, then this is going to run you a pretty penny. Before 15, if you only need to do a little bit, I think it's like $50 a test. So yeah, you might want to be sparing with that depending on what you have going on in your bank account. For user interviews, it is actually not a testing platform, so it is specifically only for recruiting, and you can also host like your own panel and like their information on their site as well. But it can get expensive depending again on your research needs, so how many participants you are recruiting for, what types of participants they are, if they're like super professional, like you need to target professionals, or otherwise, if you need people to sign an NDA, like there are just other things that you can add on depending on your needs that can make it more expensive. For both of these platforms, we need to have demographic information that we can use to identify our targets in addition to a screener survey. And it is imperative that we write these well so that we make sure we're collecting information from, again, the right people. If you don't know how to write screener surveys, or if you're just looking for tips on writing them well, I have an episode where I talk about how to do that and write them effectively. So go ahead and check that out, and I'll link it right up here. And then there's Usability Hub, and I would say that this is the more budget-friendly version of the three. It is also a testing platform, so you can conduct tests on there and recruit from their panel to take those tests. And I was using this more so for like lightweight gut check tests when money was tight. So that is what I would recommend using it for. You can also do surveys on there too, so that's an option. And it's free to use up to a certain point. But if you want to actually have access to their panel, and we're talking about recruiting here with an online panel, you have to pay for access to that. So it can range from like $2 to $6 per participant, depending on like the length of your test, I think the type of your test too, and also the number of participants. The downside with recruiting from Usability Hub is that there is no screener survey that's required / that you can add to your test when you're recruiting for participants. They will let you insert like demographic information, and that's about it. You do that and then you release it to the wild. And so this is a much wider net that's being cast as far as like who is able to participate in the test that you set up. So being cognizant of that and making sure that we're aware of this fact and also comfortable with that being the case, and the possible information that we can gather from all sorts of different people that meet like these demographics that we've set up is very important. And if we don't want to use an online panel, we can always get creative and build our own panels. If you already have users, then boom, like that's nice. Like that's nice and easy. You just reach out to them, ask them if they're interested in participating in research every now and again, and if they're cool with being added to this pool of people who we're pulling information from, and if they are, then we're set. So that's one way. Another way is actually, finding people. If we don't have users, then we'll have to go about it a different way. If we're gonna keep the, example that we were using before about looking for people who are dog owners, right? Instead of going through market research firms or looking to recruit through an online panel, we can literally find these people where they're most likely to be at. So meeting people where they're at is another way to do this. Where are dog owners? They are at the dog park, maybe Petco, PetSmart, kennels, the vet, like wherever dog owners are most likely to be, that's where you can recruit from. Now, side note, I said the vet. I would probably play it by ear on that one. You gotta read the room when you're trying to recruit people for research too. It's the vet, so people can either be leaving or just be there and be really happy or maybe really sad, definitely anxious because it's the doctor. So yeah, maybe I wouldn't recommend the vet. That's just an example of where dog owners could be. I'm not sure if you've ever ran into someone just out on the street doing a survey for an organization, but these people are typically in areas where there's a lot of foot traffic. Why? Because they are more likely to just be rejected by more people. So they got to put themselves in a place to cast a wide net to at least get some people to participate in their research, maybe, or their survey, whatever it is that they're doing. So that's not super targeted, and maybe they don't need to be. But this is kind of the same thing with us when we're doing recruiting this way. Except we don't want to just be in some random general area with people who are doing the surveys for the org. Most people do not interact with them or agree to participate in their research because one, it's random. Two, they most likely don't know about the organization or the mission and they might not even care about it. But with us, we want people to know what we're talking about. We want the problem that we are solving for to be identifiable. We want people to be able to identify with that, so much so that they agree to talk to us a little bit more to give us some insight. So instead of broadcasting to the masses, we want to place ourselves in a setting where people will be more likely to care about what it is that we're actually doing, and for that information to be applicable for the group that we're creating this product for. So instead of some random area downtown, we could be posted up at PetSmart or somewhere at a dog park and recruit from there. We can be like, hey, I'm working on this product that helps people schedule on-the-go grooming services for their dogs, and I would love to get some feedback. Do you have an extra 10 minutes? I don't know if that's a problem, but let's say it is, and it's something that we're solving for. And it works even better when you have a little incentive to go along with it. So like in exchange for your time, I'm offering, $10 gift cards to PetSmart. Having a table too could help to bring people to you instead of you always having to approach them, because I know from personal experience, it can be really uncomfortable and nerve-wracking, especially for my fellow introverts out there, to just go up and talk to strangers with more likelihood than that they will reject you. It does not feel good, but you do get used to it. And so to lessen that a little bit, having a table with maybe a sign that states the problem, or a question, an enticing question that describes the problem that you're solving for, could be a solution for that. And I don't think you would be able to do this outside of PetSmart unless they agree to that, and they might. I mean, you could ask. We're getting really deep into this example right now. But yeah, I definitely got kicked out of Sally one time. So, play that by ear. But yeah, post up outside at the dog park with a table and a sign that says, aren't you tired of XYZ? Or have you ever needed to schedule a haircut for your dog and you were, on the road, whatever the gist is of that problem, I guess. And people who have this problem, who are open and willing to talk, might come up to you and be like, hey, what's this all about? I do have this problem. Tell me more. What are you doing here? Maybe. So it's kind of a way to be a little bit more targeted too, for people who both have dogs and then also have that specific problem. You can get creative with it. The startup I was working on previously was a beauty tech startup, and it focused on hair and experience with hair products. And so I found myself going to Ulta and Sally Beauty. I mentioned like I kicked out of Sally one time. That happens. And also like the strip mall too, to talk to people, to like really grab people where they're at in the moment, to understand some of their experiences and to get feedback on something that we were working on. And sometimes I didn't need like super specific feedback from people who were only shopping for hair products or experiencing that thing in the moment. All I needed was like general feedback. So I would hit up Starbucks like nobody's business. I would be in Starbucks and just hitting up random people to give me feedback. Why was Starbucks so good? Let me tell you. People are always going to be waiting there. So because you go in and you order your coffee, if you're not doing like the to-go, or if you didn't order it like through the app, they're gonna be waiting there for their order to be complete. Took advantage of that waiting time and was like, hey, you have an extra blah, 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 while you wait for your coffee. And a lot of the time people said yes, and I was able to get feedback that way. I also had an incentive for that too. It was like $10 Starbucks gift card. So that was helpful for that as well. Another way I got creative with recruiting was I recruited through platforms where people were looking for things. So specifically TaskRabbit and Craigslist. I personally would not recommend Craigslist. I got this recommendation out of the Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olson. And you know, it can work. I'm not saying it won't work, but there's also very, very shady people on Craigslist. If you don't know already, now you know. It's like a lot of shady shit that goes down on Craigslist. And so you just kind of gotta be careful with that. I don't think it's the safest option, especially if you're doing research solo. I had a couple people that I scheduled through Craigslist and they were both no-shows, and like we were meeting in a public place for sure. Like that was not the issue, but then it got to thinking, it's just like, all right, there's not a lot of control as far as the people who are allowed to answer your things, your ads on Craigslist. And so I'm like, I started thinking, by the time I got to the second interview and like nobody showed up, I was just like, oh, what if that person was like the same person and they just took my screener survey with a different email address and they were just like scoping me out the whole time for this first and second session where they didn't show up. You never know. I don't know. So I was very like wary and super aware leaving that second session of the no-show, and you know, looking for kidnap vans and things, because that could happen. That could happen. I'm also very small and kidnappable, and I will put up a fight, you know what I'm saying, but you can pick me up, so there's only so much I can do. But yeah, that's Craigslist for you. Then I moved on to TaskRabbit, where I had a little bit more luck. And if you don't know what TaskRabbit is, it's an app. I don't even know if it's like still around, or like if people are still using it often, especially like during the whole pandemic now. But you could literally like put in a task that you wanted somebody to do and they would come and do it for you. So if you needed your furniture assembled, then they would come and assemble your furniture for you and do all sorts of other things. And on TaskRabbit, they had a section or like an option for user feedback. And so I was able to schedule a session through that way, and it was okay. The only downside with it is you don't get to do a screener up front. So like you go through and you choose the person that you want to accept this task. And so I couldn't be super targeted with that. It was just more so like going off of their profile picture and whatever other information they have on their profile, if any. So it's not a very great way, but it was a way. Now, like I kind of alluded to before, I did all of this while we were all very comfortable being in person with each other before the pandemic. And so now that, you know, COVID is doing her thing, things are gonna have to adjust. Remote recruiting is hard, at least in my opinion it is. And it was difficult before the pandemic. It is especially difficult if your product is very early in its life and you don't have a user base to reach out to. In this environment, online panels have been the go-to for me, and they have been working out really well. But if we don't have the budget for that, then what then? What is the equivalent of posting up outside of PetSmart? Well, I have a few ideas. Obviously, more people are online now because of Corona, so it's all a matter of figuring out where these people are to, again, meet them where they're at. And so places online like Facebook groups, for instance, probably have, a good amount of dog owners. If there are like dog specific Facebook groups that we can look for and become a part of, possibly Reddit threads on dog things. I don't know. Maybe like other forums, online forums where they talk about dog things too, as like dog owners. And people love talking about their dogs. I have found just as much, maybe even more, than they love talking about their kids. We are super sticking into this dog owner example right now, but just roll with it. Maybe you can get someone that has a lot of reach on social media to repost or retweet the information, or like the thing that you're doing, and soliciting for information that way. There are probably a bunch of meetups that have converted to online, possibly, so checking that out and seeing if that's a possibility. Are there like secret society, super established dog owner organizations? I don't know. But maybe, so researching and seeing if we can find other dog owner communities, if they have Slack groups. Maybe if you know people who own dogs and they could shed more light on the information that you need in that aspect, asking them, hey, do you belong to something, or do you know of something? And in these communities, maybe you could join, or maybe you could have someone who you know who's already part of that community pass on the information as well. A thing that I will say about joining different communities is that the people who run that community and who are a part of that community will expect you to contribute to that community. So just coming in and soliciting for feedback and information is probably not the best way to go for you, and not providing value to the group and only asking for people to give may wind up with you being kicked out of that group. And so just like FYI, speaking from experience. But yeah, it's really just a matter of finding people where they're at online. And in my opinion, it may be a little bit harder to do this now. And I'm only saying that because it's like, yeah, people most likely are on their computers more, on their phones more, and interacting like with the internet more, because we're not able to go outside and do the things that we normally did. But also it's just like, because of that, we're working a whole lot and being on our computers a whole lot. And so outside of work, maybe we don't want to be on our computers anymore. And so it's just like, all right, so are people actually on the internet outside of work just doing other things, or are they wanting to step away from their screens and do something else that doesn't involve opening a browser? So I don't know. But that brings me to our parting question for this episode. Do you have any other good ideas that we can add to this list on recruiting people online without using firms and without using already established online panels? Or are there other panels that you found are maybe more affordable, budget friendly, and you think work well? I'm sure I'm not thinking of all the possibilities, so let me know if you can think of some others that have worked really well for you that are also not breaking the bank. Let me know in the comments. All right, y'all, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for sticking in there. This one's a little longer than I meant for it to be, honestly, but you made it, and that's great. If you liked what you heard and want to stick around for this ride, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well to be notified every time I post new content. I post new content every other Wednesday, and you can sign up for the newsletter where I send out UX resources and other information about what content has been posted every so often. And if you'd like to do that, you can go ahead and do it on the website at www.unpackedangles.com. And you can reach us on social media as well. We are out there on Instagram and Twitter at Unpacked Angles. I hope we are having a decent and restful holiday season. We're recording this closer to Christmas, so that's why I'm saying that. Yeah, anyways, as always, let me know what you're doing, what you're working on, what you got going on. And until next time, y'all, deuces.